Welcome to Kung Fu Habit number 2. So, first, I am sorry. Second, I am making up for my first Indigenous Erasure video. I am pretty sure I will not be able to spell that correctly, so I will have to use Google to play that. And on a somber note, somebody explain to me where I can go to find the DAWS records. I need that to prove my indigeneity. Now, let's get on the topic. So, Indigenous Erasure. Yeah, I'm about to eat this Slim Jim here. Oh yeah, snap a Slim Jim. Okay. Gotta wash it down. Y'all know how I do. Nothing tastes better than tea. Yes, I have Gatorade over there somewhere. And I have Sunny D, orange juice. Anyway, Indigenous Erasure. Indigenous Erasure has been a thing on TikTok for quite some time. Quite some time. And it is basically the thing of people who are not native to America saying that they are. And these people, sadly, are of black or African American descent. I do not count myself as an African American, even though I am mixed with black. I call myself black versus African American. Okay? Now, the real African Americans are the ones who immigrate from Africa to America to live out a better life. Where I, on the hand, am born here, bred here, half native, also half white. So I am a triple threat, and I mostly consider myself to be a black native, or a native black, or a multicultural person. And the reason being is because I have native on both sides, I have black on both sides, I have white on one side. And being that I'm multicultural, it is easier for me to just go with that. Also, because my birth certificate from 1973 has Negro written on it. So, therefore, I identify with that so that I don't get fired for lying on my application if I apply for a job. Now, there are a lot of color creators and content creators in TikTok who are saying, and again, they don't have factual proof, but they are saying a so-called black man was never from Africa. That they've always been in America, not Africa. The unfortunate truth is, they forgot that all life began on Africa. So, regardless of what they say, science has proven that all life began in Africa. Many scientists were executed proving that shit. So, respect the science, respect the people, but be open-minded enough to know that sometimes science might not be right. If you watch my other video, you understand. I said that because when I was younger, I used to believe that Native Americans was from Atlantis. Once that was proven wrong to me, I had no more dogs in the fight for Atlantis. However, I can't point you to an exact date of when this indigenous erasure shit started. I can't. I can point you to some human defenders who have debunked that quite a few times. Sorry, Sunny Delight has some serious sugar arrives in it. And I'm like high risk diabetes. because we had it on both sides of my family. And I would prefer not to die or lose any limbs from not taking care of myself. So I added some water to this Sunny Delight. I mean, how many grams of sugar is in this damn thing? I know, irrelevant. Anyway, the bottom line is that there are a lot of TikTok creators that are black going around saying that Native Americans aren't the real Native Americans, that black people are the real Native Americans, and that we weren't victims of the slave trade. We all know that that's not 1,000% true. We also know that natives come in different shades of brown. Alright? As you can see, I have exceptionally light up here and dark here, but this is from years of work, where my grandmother Bay was darker than her mother Ada, both Native Americans. So this indigenous erasure shit has been going on for quite some time. And I don't understand why or how, but it's more or less about self-hatred from black people to themselves, which is how we got here in the first place, and that kind of sets the stage for indigenous erasure. Now, there have been other TikTokers and Instagrammers that have been fighting these people on indigenous erasure to make sure that indigenous erasure does not happen. And then there's been some tribal issues and some other things going on, and most of this is coming off of native TikTok. So y'all have to understand where the feelings are coming from. And the feelings are homegrown because of racism and pressure and a lot of infighting. These things continue to happen just because we allow these things to happen. But we also don't sit down and talk. And when they have these indigenous erasure TikToks, most of the guys that's talking about the indigenous that are being black and who are black don't really let indigenous who are natives come on to their platform to have an open discord. They just block them or yell at them and tell them they're liars and all this other shit. And in turn, the indigenous native gets angry and starts saying all kinds of filth-flying filth. But if we're not talking, we're not learning. And if we're not learning because we're not listening, then we have more problems. But indigenous erasure is a thing that is going on. It's been going on for quite some time, and you guys should probably check that shit out. It is on TikTok more often. It just depends on what you have that your FYP will send you there. So every now and again, I stumble into such crazy-ass lives. Some of them happen to be indigenous erasure. Some of them have to be about flat earth. And some of them just are random as hell. But indigenous erasure is something that we definitely need to address. And no matter what you believe, you have the right to your opinion, which is great. But you also have to listen to others, because sometimes your opinion might be biased and you may not want to hear the things that are being said to you. Because, like I said in my other video, all my life, before the 5th grade, I always just wanted to be black. I didn't want to be native. I didn't do anything because I didn't know what any of that shit was. I didn't know I was that. I only knew that my mom looked white, my dad looked black, and all the kids in school would call me half-breed and knew that I was half black and half white. Like I said, it wasn't until the 5th grade when I found out we actually was indigenous. So I was like, oh, after that beating I got, yeah, I'm very much a native now. I earned my native blood by that beating for those 30 or so bars of soap. So, yeah, stuff happens, and this dog can come down the hallway. Get your ass down the hallway. Go. Go down the hall. You know where you sleep. Keep going. Don't come back. Go to bed. Okay. Anyway, this is a thing. We go through this almost every night. Anyway, indigenous erasure has to be coming to a stop soon. Sooner or later, everybody's going to accept the facts. And it's the same thing with the flat earth people. You're going to have people that are hard-pressed in believing that black people never came from Africa, that they were always in America. And then you have to understand it. Okay, that kind of contradicts some shit because of the fact I'm going to need to put these on before I go down the hallway because I know my floor is clean. But that kind of contradicts the shit that that is stated because one, natives come in many colors of brown. Two, but the fact that American slaves mostly were black, indentured servants were not black, but American slaves were black, and the ones that were sexually assaulted and had babies from their masters were as light as me. Okay, so back then, slaves didn't really have a fair shot, but most of the slaves were black, and like I said, indigent servants were there, and there were some native slaves too, and there were probably native slaves inside of tribes, depending on what you choose to believe, because history was written by the victor. Now the problem with that is there hasn't been a whole lot of confirmation from the natives admitting or denying that they had black slaves as well as indigenous slaves. So you're kind of lost in the sauce on that. But when it comes to the Mayans, the Incans, the Aztec, the Amazon, and all the other native tribes that have gone unknown or unsaid and have been wiped out or assimilated into other tribes, they look more like me with hair like mine versus not hair like mine. So I don't know how to word that without offending people. So I'm not going to word that. But let's just know you guys have seen my hair. I just put this on because I got out of the shower. And I would prefer to keep the moisture in my hair. And it'll make it easier to keep the hair out of my eyes as I do this video. But, there has to be a cutoff point where common sense has to kick in. Now, you also have to understand your color also is part of your environment. And if you have a certain kind of heat, if you have moist heat, you darken. But if you have dry heat, you tend to stay the same. And when you have that in-between climate, it probably depends on the time of year. Because I get a little bit lighter when it gets colder. But not here. This is permanent. But this here gets brighter when it gets colder. And it's probably because I don't go outside. Unless I have to. But for the most part, the Mayans, the Incans, and the Aztec have straight hair. They do not have the African tone of black hair. Now, a lot of people will argue with you against that, and that's fine, that's your opinion, but the fact of the matter is, most natives have either straight hair or curly hair. In full natives, it's a conglomerate mix. But the thing is, the people who are doing indigenous erasure don't want to hear that shit. Don't want to say that shit. They just want to say that people who are native, that if you are of like any of the full-on nations that are federally recognized in the First Nations, in the Americas, and in the South Americas, that y'all aren't really native because black people are the original natives of America. And then when you think about it, it's like that is highly feasible, also highly disputable. But again, no matter what you are, whether you are black, Asian, native, Spanish, all life began in Africa. They have proven that. But the indigenous erasure comes from the fact that a lot of black people just hate black. They hate being black, they hate having any African roots, and then they forget that, you don't have to admit to being African. But your skin tone is something that you really can't change. I can't change mine. I like to be back to this color. Now, I like being high yellow, but I am really brown. So I've lived with this brownness for 40 some odd damn years. But I have never not once said that blacks were the original Americans. But that's part of the problem. I'm pretty sure you can probably Google that shit. Matter of fact, let me see if we can do that. Indigenous erasure.
According to Wikipedia, Ereasure is an English synth-pop duo formed in London in 1985, consisting of singer-songwriter Andy Bell with songwriter, producer and keyboardist Vince Clarke, Previously known as
I-
co-founder of
I
the
swear
band
that's not
Depeche
what I
Mode and a
said.
member of electropop duo Yazoo.
Are you done? Indigenous Erasure. Okay. So erasing indigenous history, then and now origins, and the erasure does not mean that native culture does not exist or that our relationships with the land on which we settlers colonies built are any less. So we're going to click this. Indigenous erasure. Note the historians constructed the narratives about what is exclusive as well as inclusive. Now wherever is that more apparent than the Native Americans people been erased for most of historians of the United States. This month, geographer, God, I hope I said that right. I'm pretty sure I didn't, so I'm going to spell that for you. Geographer. I guess that's geographer. I can't say his first name. It looks like DeAndre, so I'm going to spell that for you. Deondre. Last name Smiles, Smiles. Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe invited us to re-examine the controversial stories of Americans tell themselves from a native point of view. At stake is not only fuller understanding of our history, but, as Smiles notes, a people erased from the past are easily erased from the present also. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense to y'all. But that's kind of what Google gave me, where it says origins, cultures, and events in historical perspective. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there you go. So we're not going to read that whole damn article. Then we have, what is native erasure? Abstract and occurring trope of American cultural history is that the vanishing of Indians. Scholars have described this trope from the indigenous erasure, where settlers socialize, discount, and eliminate the presence of American Indian people, cultures, and polites. I don't know what that means, but okay. How many indigenous people were wiped out? Why indigenous knowledge is disappearing? The percentage of indigenous population was wiped out at a European disease. What are indigenous people? What indigenous land is Boston on? Oh, that is a good question. Massachusetts tribe. Emerson College, Boston resides in the ancestral unceded lands of the Massachusetts people, who were named appropriately by the Commonwealth. Well, that tells me absolutely fucking nothing other than the Massachusetts tribe. Alright, what are indigenous people? Indigenous people is a direct social and cultural group that share collective ancestral ties to the land and nature resources, that's natural, resources which they live, occupied, or from which they have been displaced. Alright, so we're not going to keep going into all these damn definitions. You guys can use Google a lot better than I can, since it gave me some Ereasure rock group from 1985 that I've never fucking heard of. But okay, we'll have to look into them. But anyway, for TikTok, there have been a lot of black creators taking over indigenous history. However, let me point this out. The fact of the matter is that they are not changing anything other than the fact that instead of having it be indigenous people, as in natives, in these places, they have put black Americans or black descendants, into that spot. So they're still telling the stories, but they're taking the natives out and putting the blacks in. So being that I am part native as well as part black, I figured I would address this, and I have done a lot better job this time than the original time. So I want to end this video on this. There has to be a way where we can have some conversation where a lot of blacks will sit and listen versus try to use somebody else's scientific mythical stories to erase native culture. Now I know you're all thinking, so I'll say it for you. You're all thinking it, so I'll say it for you. You go by Echo Fang Grey Wolf instead of James Williams Jr. You are part native as well as part black. So why are you picking the native side versus the black side? I'm picking the truth. However, personally, I feel more native than black. I tend to look more native than black to most people. You have no idea how many times someone has called me Mexican or Hawaiian, and very few people who aren't black have called me black. Where when I do meet black people, they don't really consider me black, they consider me a half breed. So, yeah. But also, I've had only two bad native experiences versus the fuck ton of native versus the fuck ton of black racial experiences that I've had. And this is for everyone who doesn't believe that black people can be racist. Reverse racism is a thing. I've been the victim of it. And in fact, we'll make a small video about that. And not that I haven't done it before. But I'm going to do that because it needs to be done. That being said, I am Echo Fang Grey Wolf. This is Kung Fu Havoc number 2. Brace yourself. Here comes Echo. And it would have been so nice for that to actually have worked, but the cursor was way over there in the corner. So yeah, here we go. Be seeing ya.